Imagine a familiar scene. You're standing in the middle of a crowded party. The music is loud. Conversations overlap. People laugh, raise their glasses, and tell animated stories. From the outside, everything looks lively and joyful. But inside your mind, the experience feels completely different. You stand there for a few minutes. You look around, and then a quiet thought appears in your head. I wish I were at home right now. Maybe sitting next to a window with a book, or simply being alone in your room, thinking about something. Not because you dislike people, but because somehow you feel more comfortable when you're by yourself. You might have noticed other things about yourself too. Sometimes you talk to yourself while thinking. Before going to sleep, your brain begins replaying conversations from earlier in the day. You might lie awake for hours analyzing something someone said, a decision you made, or a possibility that might happen in the future. And sometimes that leads you to ask yourself, why am I like this? Why do things that seem normal for everyone else feel exhausting to you? Why does your mind seem to think more deeply or more intensely than others? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, am I just strange? If you've ever felt this way, stay with me for a moment. Because modern psychology is beginning to uncover something surprising. Many habits that society often labels as weird actually appear quite frequently among people with higher levels of intelligence. And sometimes, the very thing that makes you feel different may simply mean your brain is working in a more complex and analytical way. Breaking the social myth. Society tends to judge people who think differently. Habits like enjoying solitude, overthinking, disliking small talk, drifting into deep thought, are often labeled as negative traits. People might say those individuals are socially awkward, overly introverted, difficult to connect with, or simply thinking too much. But research in cognitive psychology suggests a different perspective. Many of these behaviors appear more often in individuals who process information more deeply and more analytically. In other words, what appears to be a weakness in the eyes of society may actually be a different cognitive style. Your brain may simply be wired to analyze the world more carefully. So if you've ever felt like you think too much, you struggle with surface-level conversations, or you need more time alone than most people, then this message is important. You are not broken. You are not alone. And sometimes what looks like a flaw is actually a hidden cognitive strength. In this video, we'll explore 10 habits that may seem strange, but are often associated with higher intelligence. And you may discover that you recognize yourself in many of them. 1. Overthinking the past and the future. Late at night, when everything around you is quiet, your brain might start replaying moments from the day. A conversation, a comment someone made, a decision you took. You might think, maybe I should have said that differently. Did they misunderstand me? What if things turn out differently next time? Then your thoughts move into the future. Your brain starts imagining possibilities. What if this happens? What if I make a different decision? How will that change everything? To others, this might look like anxiety. People might say you are overthinking, but cognitive psychology suggests something else may be happening. People with strong fluid intelligence often have the ability to simulate multiple possibilities in their minds. Their brains run mental experiments, comparing potential outcomes. This process relies heavily on working memory, the system that allows the brain to hold and manipulate information simultaneously. So when your mind runs through different scenarios, it may actually be performing a complex cognitive task. Your brain is simulating the future, not to make you anxious, but to minimize risk and find better decisions. And sometimes what others call overthinking is simply deep analysis. 2. Organized chaos. Imagine walking into 2 different offices. One desk is perfectly clean. Everything is aligned and tidy. The other desk looks chaotic. Books are open. Notes are scattered. Projects are half finished. There might even be a cold cup of coffee sitting nearby. To most people, the second desk looks messy. But for the person who works there, everything has meaning. They know where every idea is written. They remember which paper belongs to which project. They can find exactly what they need in seconds. Psychologists sometimes describe this as organized chaos, for minds that process many ideas simultaneously. The physical environment becomes a map of their thinking. Objects around them represent ideas waiting to be revisited. Instead of storing everything in memory, their brain distributes cues into the environment. So what appears to be clutter may actually be a functional thinking system. 3. Needing more alone time. Social events can be enjoyable, but for some people, they can also be mentally exhausting. In social situations, the brain must constantly read facial expressions, interpret tone of voice, understand context, track multiple conversations at once. All of this happens within seconds. For people with highly active minds, this amount of information can become overwhelming. That's why many intelligent individuals require more solitude to recharge. Not because they dislike people, But because the brain has processed an enormous amount of social data, solitude provides what the mind needs most: silence. In quiet moments, the brain can process experiences, connect ideas, generate new insights. Sometimes the most creative thoughts emerge during these moments of solitude. 4. Daydreaming during simple tasks. You may have experienced this while doing routine tasks. Walking, washing dishes, driving. Your body is on autopilot, but your mind drifts somewhere else. You start imagining ideas, solutions, stories. To an observer, it may look like you are distracted, but neuroscience suggests something different. When the brain is not focused on demanding tasks, a network called the default mode network becomes active. This network supports imagination, creativity, memory integration, idea generation. Many creative breakthroughs occur during these moments. So daydreaming is not always a lack of focus. Sometimes it is the brain connecting distant ideas together. 5. Falling into research rabbit holes. You start reading about something simple. One article leads to another, then another. Hours later, you realize you've been deeply researching a topic you didn't even know about earlier. To others, this may seem obsessive, but curiosity is one of the strongest drivers of intelligence. When someone dives deeply into a subject, their brain begins linking new knowledge to old knowledge, building conceptual frameworks, expanding their understanding of the world. These rabbit holes often produce highly specialized knowledge, and that knowledge becomes fuel for deep conversations and creative insights later. 6. Thinking carefully before responding. Society often praises quick answers. In meetings, fast responses are seen as confidence. In debates, quick reactions appear sharp. But intelligence is not always about speed. Psychologists describe 2 thinking systems. System 1. Fast, intuitive, automatic. System 2, slow, analytical, deliberate. Most people rely on the first, but analytical thinkers often pause before answering. They check assumptions. They analyze possibilities. A 2022 study reported on Science Direct found that highly intelligent individuals tend to delay immediate responses when facing complex questions. They prefer deliberate reasoning over instinctive answers. From the outside, this pause may look like hesitation, but it is actually cognitive caution, because the first answer that appears in your mind is not always the best one. 7. Disliking small talk. Small talk helps social interactions run smoothly. But for analytical thinkers, it can feel unfulfilling. Conversations about weather or routine topics often stay at the surface. People with curious minds often crave deeper discussions. They enjoy talking about ideas, perspectives, and meaningful questions. Small talk is like standing at the edge of an ocean. They want to swim further into deeper waters. 8. Having few but deep friendships. Highly intelligent people often have smaller social circles, but their friendships tend to be deeper. Maintaining relationships requires emotional and cognitive energy. People who think intensely often prefer investing that energy into a few meaningful connections rather than many casual ones. Quality matters more than quantity. Sometimes a few genuine friendships provide more fulfillment than dozens of superficial ones. 9. Enjoying sarcasm and layered humor. Sarcasm may sound simple, but understanding it requires multiple layers of cognition. The brain must recognize the literal meaning, understand the social context, realize the speaker intends the opposite meaning. Research from Harvard and Columbia has suggested that people who use sarcasm often perform better on creativity tests. Sarcasm requires multi-layer thinking. It is a small but powerful exercise in cognitive flexibility. 10. Seeing patterns others miss. One hallmark of intelligence is pattern recognition. Some people notice connections between events that others overlook. They identify trends. They see signals hidden within noise. To outsiders, this might look like overanalyzing. But pattern recognition is fundamental in fields like science, strategy, business, article. The world rarely presents clear answers. It offers small clues, and analytical minds are often the first to connect them. If you look back at these habits, you may notice something interesting. Many behaviors that society calls weird, such as overthinking, enjoying solitude, avoiding small talk, or diving deeply into ideas, may simply reflect a brain that processes the world differently. You are not broken. You are not strange. You may simply be thinking in a way that differs from the majority. And sometimes, those differences are exactly what push human understanding forward. What about you? Did you recognize yourself in any of these habits? Which one made you feel different growing up? Share your experience in the comments. Because sometimes, when we hear someone else's story, we realize we were never truly alone.